Do you guys smell that? It smells like justice. I've been thinking a lot about, we Trump had said that we're going to get tired of winning, and it's funny because he makes these outlandish statements that you think are unachievable or impossible, and then he just blows your mind because we're on day 8 and he continues. I don't know where this guy gets his energy from, right? I mean, like, he is like the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going and going and going. It's crazy. Oh man, how you guys doing? We'll wait for some people to connect here. I'm going to share my screen over here. We're just waiting for Yasplane to show up. We were going to come on at 2:30, and his computer decided it didn't want to cooperate. We need to get him a new computer. We're going to work on that. Work on getting him a new computer, new camera, maybe a Starlink internet or something like that, so we don't keep having these issues. But in the meantime, while we wait for him to connect, let's do this. Let us go look at... Oh, did I forget to share? Why is that not showing? Add to scene? There. Why? Media share. Weird. There. Sorry, I don't know what happened here. We'll just fix this. There. Nope. There you go. All right, we'll go through some feeds here. Oh, the little Two Witnesses Live logo is covering my face. I don't know how to turn that off. Here, can I? Watchful. Oh, is it locked? Sorry, technical difficulties today, apparently. Here we go. Unlock. There you go. Did that work? Or I can move me over here. No idea. I don't know why it is not showing my image. Bear with me, guys. Why is this guy not showing up? Oh, I bet you that's what it is. There it is. Yeah. Okay, so the software here, apparently you've got to get your layers correct in order to show your video. So there you are. Hi, I guess I'm down in the lower left-hand corner today. I didn't realize that there was that watermark that affected the show. Anyway, here we are. So let's get to our comments. Hey, everybody. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, it's been a while. So I haven't really done any updates this week. The last video that I did was just catching up on the timeline. I wanted to do that consistent, like what data that I currently have that I'm currently standing on is my opinion. Granted, it's all subject to change if somebody can make a better case or a better argument, but I wanted to get that out as kind of like the solid foundation so that when I refer to things in regards to the end times or the seals or the witnesses, there's a video that I can actually refer to that's not too long. I tried to keep it short. It's 30 minutes. I wanted to actually keep it around like 15, but there's just too much information to pack into 15 minutes. If I can, it's funny. I do actually have one. I should probably go update it. I do have a 30-second short that goes through the different seals, but it's just, you get a lot of people mocking because, you can say that, like, I believe that this represents seal number 1, seal number 2, and without actually validating why it is I believe that. Most people defer to what it is they've been taught or what it is that they believe. So it's like I find that you really have to provide evidence that is supportive of your position, and that's what I was trying to do with that video. So that, and if you notice, I keep trying to change. I keep changing the title, which is a thing that you can do in YouTube. You can change the title of your videos in order to get them to perform better. And I know some people might find this a little bit frustrating, but this is based on a technique from a YouTuber called Veritasium. He does what's it called? It's about clickbait. So if you go on YouTube and you look for videos on clickbait, Veritasium does a really good explanation on why you want to do a video with a title that's a little clickbaity, and it's not with the intent to deceive. The idea is you need to strike the balance between what is going to get people's attention in order to click on the video and what describes the content of the video. So YouTube has made it so that you can actually change the title and thumbnails of your YouTube videos in order to find that proper balance. And it's all with the goal of finding the right audience. So if you guys notice that I keep changing the title, that's why. Trying to find the right title that properly describes the content of the video that actually gets people's attention so that they have the desire to want to click on and watch the content. Yeah, the title and your thumbnail are like 90% of getting traction on YouTube. If you want to get a thumbnail that is unique enough that on the full page of things, new people will see it and be interested in clicking on it. Likewise with the title, you want to generate some excitement. You want to generate a reason for people to actually click on that video. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. But I've been staying up on a lot of what's been going on, but just haven't done any video updates on it. Yosplane should be joining us here shortly. He is having some issues with, I don't know if it's his internet or his computer. He's still working on it, so he'll join us. So in the meantime, let's see. Phidias is right. So let's look at Elon and Trump. Trump has been super, super busy. I mean, where does this guy get the energy? I'm having a hard time keeping up with him. I can imagine what his day looks like from like the moment he gets up. How much sleep does he get? It's between, flying around the country. He's in 8 days, he signed over 350 executive orders. He's visited multiple states. He solved multiple problems. The dude is a machine. Hang on a minute. Yosplane is talking to me over here. Hang on, let me switch back to the scene just to... Oh, there he is.
Amateur causing disruptions here.
There he is. Yosplane.
Switch around here.
You switched your phone? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'm on.
Shalom, shalom.
What's happening? I don't know what's going on with the computers. Windows 11 keeps crashing. So.
Oh, I haven't even tried updating to Windows 11. I use Windows so rarely that I don't have any. I used to, all my machines used to be Windows, but in the last 10 years or so, I've been using a lot of Linux and Apple products. I'm a software engineer, so I write a lot on MacBooks.
The phone won't let me turn, huh?
It should, but that looks good.
I've got to stand here. It's funny because my image is frozen on my end.
Uh-oh.
I don't know. Emux, that software, I just don't have success with it.
It seems to be any browser-based software on your machine seems to have an issue because this is the second browser-based software that we used because the first one was Riverside. They're pretty CPU intensive.
I'm on my cell phone, so I don't.
Yeah. Well,
And I have my earbud plugged in, but it's not working. So like every time I come in here on my cell phone, I have to troubleshoot trying to figure out why the audio doesn't work correctly.
hmm.
Anywho, what's happening? What's going on, everyone?
Just getting caught up. How you been?
Did I miss anything? The world
No,
still.
I was just getting ready to go through the X feeds and the Truth Social feeds to see what we've. I've been staying up on what Elon and Trump has been doing. Barely. It's very hard to keep up with everything that's happening lately. It's happening at breakneck speeds. How about you?
Is So you're saying President Trump and Vice President Elon have been at it?
Vice President Elon. No. JD Vance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Elon, he's doing his job. I mean, he's producing results with Doge already. They did you hear about the $50 million that the Biden administration was sending to Gaza?
Oh, for the was it the condoms?
Yeah.
I was like, why
Yeah.
don't they just send toothpaste and Coca-Cola over there if they really want to sterilize everyone?
Yeah. Well, I don't think they want to sterilize them. They use them for bombs. They fill them up with helium and attach explosives to them. Yeah.
To the condoms?
Yes. Yeah, they do. They had. I don't know if you saw the pictures, but they fill them up with helium and they attach little miniature explosives to them, so that they go land in the area and kids pick them up and they can get hurt. Yeah, it's terrible. And the Biden administration was supporting that indirectly.
About blowing your
Kids
or,
blowing your load, a whole new meaning. Okay.
yeah. So why? How can you even justify that? I don't. How much are condoms? I don't know. I mean, that 50 million. There's not even that many people in that country, right? That seems
Yeah. Well, it's
seems.
$50 million. So who knows
Right.
what a pack of.
I mean, I would think you could get them for a buck a piece at that
You,
volume. I'm
you
not sure, but
think you could get them less, right? But
oh, well, I mean, like it's funny because every time I look at the news, hear another story like, hey, he undid this, he undid that. Like I watched I don't know if did you see the new girl press secretary her first session. She was
yes.
like talking about the price of eggs, and they had the previous administration, Biden administration, had millions of chickens killed, and I'm like, man, this guy killed all these chickens before he left. He got one more out of us, and it's kind of like,
Yeah.
what the heck was just going on these last 4 years? It was just That's insanity.
Yeah, the weird thing about the chickens, so I actually have a poultry farm, and the weird thing about the chickens is the test that they use for avian influenza, it's not accurate. Like it's a mixed bag on if it gets accurate results. But what they're doing is, regardless of like trying testing multiple things, if they get a single positive result, they euthanize the entire flock, and it's resulted in literally millions of birds being put down. And judging the way that things have been going for this last week, it seems to me as though it was intentional. Like they're intentionally trying to destroy the food supply chain by any means possible and generate fear regarding this avian influenza. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not dangerous. It doesn't mean that it's not an actual thing. It's just that they were over responding to it, and it was just utterly ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, this a couple of years ago, our county fair wouldn't even allow chickens at the fair because they were afraid of influenza, and they got tired of being afraid of it. So the last year, they were, whatever. We're just gonna see what happens, and everything was fine.
Well,
So
that's what the last 4 years seemed intentional, just with
yeah,
what was going on. It's kind of like, I mean, and I've always said that it's like, welcome to the clown show. This is all kind of, it felt very, scripted. And
hmm
even, if I don't know if you've looked into like politicians, most of them are failed actors in a sense, or
hmm
they are just actors. They're
like
part of
Zelensky.
this CCA, I think it's called. This whole organizations where you can go on there and you can pretty much rent a politician to come and do a performance and stuff, and speak on stage or do whatever. So they're all like, there's some folks that are just like performative, like AOC, or you know
hmm
left and right, both sides. They're just hypocrites, and it really goes back to the history of understanding Hippocrates, Hippocrates, and understanding that they would wear a mask, and that's what actors are. They're professional liars, right? And
Yeah,
so that's what a lot of politicians, they're professional liars, and they're all a lot of politicians and actors and everything are a part of this organization. I don't know if you can look it up. I want to say it's CCA or something like that, but it's an organization, to where you can go in there and see all these different types of politicians and actors and stuff that are all part of the same group. And so, it's performative, it's theatrical, um, art. It's theater in a sense, political
yeah.
theater. And so there's just a lot of stuff, people, when a politician says something, like I go on to X or something and people are just yelling at each other, this and that, and it's like intentional provocation. And it's designed that way to divide us, to keep us at each other's throat, to keep us, and they just, people say stupid stuff intentionally or do stupid things to, you know, it's just part of the programming. It's part of the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a big list of actors who are heavily involved in politics. I mean, like you think Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously. Um,
It's the CAA, Creative Artist Agency.
hmm, there's a wiki page dedicated to him.
Yeah, you can go to CAA.com and you can search and look at different, you'll see Congress people there and these different politicians and stuff. And
Well, I mean, did you see the RFK questioning today? I mean, I've seen so many of those. Um, what do they call them? The questioning of the Congress and the Senate of the people that for the president's cabinet. I've seen so many of them, and even just watching Congress, it's all a show. I mean, like people get up there, the questions they have zero interest in actually getting an answer. They ask the questions in order to push their narrative, and they're super dramatic about it. So yeah, you're totally right. They're actors that are trying to generate drama rather than actually doing anything good. It's funny because today I was thinking it almost feels like we're in the day of judgment. Like because with the things that have been happening, it's like I'm very excited for what Trump is doing. I mean, like he is doing amazing work. And I have hope. And it's like there's a light has like I think Benny, the guy Benny has a show, a YouTube channel. He says it's just like the fever broke, right? It's like we've had a fever for 4 years and it just broke. So it's like things are looking up.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's kind of like, I think we're all still kind of a little leery, like on our toes, like, are they regrouping? And I guess it doesn't really matter. Y'all's on the throne no matter what. And
Yeah,
um, at the end of the day, it's like, we already know we've won and stuff, but we still have to exist in this carnal realm that we're in. And it's kind of like, that's why we're supposed to pray for our leaders, pray for those in government, and that, that we may have peace and stuff. And but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it does feel like, man, just what the heck was that the last 4 years? What was going on? And just all the stuff he's having to put back in place. It's like, why are we even making executive orders for just this stuff? Should have just been sanity. Even like having
Right.
a just one American flag on a pole, simple stuff. And it's just like, yeah, it's been intentional. Like we were just have been under attack, and people are still like just I think other people from like the Democratic side are waking up in some respect, and but I mean we can't be naive either. That's why I was like, I made that joke about Trump, doing like masculinity's back. He's up there dancing with the gay song, you know, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, is this? It's all part of the show, and it's like we can't be naive, and we can't. Nobody is above scrutiny, and so we
Yeah.
always have to stay on our toes and make sure we're, diligent and understanding of what's taking place on around us and stuff. But that's where it's important for us as believers to just keep that prayer life going and getting engaged, being involved in everyone in their local community. It's from the ground up. That's the only way that this can be successful, and it's standing up to tyranny that we've
Mm.
all done for the last few years. And I think it finally caught on. A lot of people were persecuted at the beginning of like COVID and all that stuff, and we people caught on and are like, what, I'm not standing up anymore. That's I kind of got to that place in my like professional career. I've been in construction my whole life and always had to do drug tests and always, like this COVID thing came out and I was like, what, I'm not going to give any more of my body fluids to any organization. Like that's no way to start a relationship with my pants down.
Right.
I was like, I'm gonna have a principle and be like, I'm not participating in some of these things. And I get the whole thing, but it just like trying to inject stuff and taking my body fluids and hair. It's like how that's how the serpent moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just subtle. Takes a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and we yield to it, and we don't. We have to stand up in our workplaces, in our churches, in our communities.
Yeah. You know what I find interesting is for the last 4 years, we've just listened to these people talk and tell us all the things they can and cannot do, and they've in essence haven't gotten anything of value done. They've all of their actions and lack of actions have just caused nothing but a trail of destruction behind them. And the thing that blows my mind is because of their severe inability to get stuff done, it makes Trump looks better than he should because like I'm thinking about the California water. Like for years they've been complaining about not having enough water. I've worked in California. I used to install satellite dishes down there, and water rationing is a real thing in California, and it has been for a long time. And the fact that he can just come in, flip a switch, and turn on the water is like indicative of like, what the hell, guys? Are you serious? All this time, it was a matter. It was just a simple matter of pushing through some of the red tape and the bullshit. And because of that, it's just like he's cutting through all the lies and deception. And it's just like it's like he's not deceived. He's able to go in, assess the situation, and just like affect positive change very, very quickly. It highlights just how worthless the administration has been prior to this. It's like, and it's indicative of people too. People will sit there and make mistakes or make excuses for why they can't do something all day long. And eventually you're like, you know what, just get off your ass and go do something. Stop talking about what you can and can't do and just get up and go do something.
Right. Well, that was I think one of the company I worked for. That was kind of one of the things that's you have everybody's got their lanes, and it becomes like not my job. There's certain things that you just don't do, and it's like it's not everybody throws their hands up. It's not my job. It's like I'm waiting on this person. Wait, everybody's like that's just the whole thing. And I watched some of that conference that he had with Bass and you know Los Angeles and stuff, and he's like, that's just too long. Like just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just get it done.
Yeah,
It's like you have authority. It's like
yeah. You
she
have
didn't realize.
emergency powers. Use them.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not in charge. It's like, no, you're in charge.
Yeah.
Make the call, make it happen. I I traveled through California like a year or two ago, and we came. I started in San Diego. I drove all the way up through the north, and then came back down, and we stopped in Bakersfield, and that's when I was like on the Kern River. I'm like, why can't they just get water right here from the Kern River? This is a huge
Mm-hmm.
river flowing here. Like there should be no reason. Why are they getting water from Colorado that's way over here? It didn't make a lot of sense. So
They're
I'm,
stupid. They're
I'm
literally
kind
the
of
people
curious.
in charge are just stupid.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of curious though, like what he says he turned the water on. What does that actually mean? Maybe if there's anybody here in the chat, California can tell us what what actually happened, because someone did directly ask the new Secretary of State that question, and she kind of dodged it a little bit. She didn't directly answer it, so I was like, what does that mean? He turned the water on? Like
My
where is?
understanding is there's a that there's all the infrastructure is in place for them to have all the water that they need, and they literally shut the gates to turn the water off in order to create in order to maintain a particular reservoir to protect some stupid fish. And by opening that, it causes the water to move and end up in the sea. And they were trying to prevent those fish from ending up in the sea. So, from my understanding, and I could be completely wrong about this, is it was literally just a matter of opening a valve to allow the water to flow again. All the infrastructure was already in place.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the the fish narrative, and that's probably part of it. But I've also heard too, like there's people that own actually a large, I don't know if it's almond or some other large farming corporation or whatever, has control over some of the water there. And so
Yeah,
there's this like family that has, and there's all these long time agreements and stuff like that had been put in place, and there's actually like certain people that are controlling it and like saying no, we kind of own that water, and so they're selling it back to California,
that could
essentially.
be.
There's
Yeah.
more to the story for sure.
Yeah, and that could be part of why he was encouraging her to use her emergency powers
Yeah.
in order to.
It's usually money. Money's really always, they'll say it's a
Yeah.
fish or whatever, it's a smelt, but
Yeah.
that's the
That's
head.
one of the things that Elon has in common with Trump. Both of them are highly, highly successful. I mean, to the tune of some of the most successful men on the planet. Trump has been the richest man in the world before. I don't think he currently is. Elon has been the richest man in the world. I think he's currently the richest man, but there are richer organizations. And I'm reminded of when he first bought Twitter. The bureaucracy of getting things done was comparable to our government, to where he was trying to recuperate money that they were just burning through, and they were running like 3 data centers, and he's like, why are we running 3 data centers? And they had all these reasons and excuses, and it literally took him getting on a plane with a group of like 5 or 6 people flying to, because he was just like, let's just shut him down, because they're like, we don't know what will happen if we shut him down. He's like, let's just shut him down and see what happens. He actually flew to the data centers, and they literally went in there with wire cutters and were pulling out plugs and snipping wires to shut the thing down to see what would happen. I mean, sometimes that's what a real leader does. It's just like there's a point where you got to cut through all the noise and the excuses and just go see what the heck happens. Who cares if it shuts everything down? We'll turn it back on again. So yeah, they
Try it.
have that in common. That's seems to be a common attribute with people who are highly successful, is they don't allow things to stop them.
Well, it's taking risk, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's risk versus reward. You always have to kind of weigh that, and we all, I think, can struggle from this risk adverse to risk, or even like it's being afraid of success.
Yeah. Well, it
That
is. Yeah.
that's a fear. People aren't afraid necessarily of failing. They're afraid of succeeding, because that means that's going to require a lot more work. It's a
Yeah.
lot more effort sometimes. And hey, I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that
Yeah.
because but that's that it, like you said, an entrepreneur, that's the spirit of an entrepreneur, is to take those risks and make sure if they're willing to put in the work to make it successful. So
Yeah. What have you been studying lately?
I started a video on Gog and Magog, and I thought it was going to be pretty
Mm.
easy and simple, but more I peeled back the onion, I'm like, wow, there's a lot more here. Just Because you know how I think, I don't know. Did you watch the video series I did on Babylon and the pyramids?
Mm-hmm.
Chance to
Yep.
see that. So that, with that at bash kind of method of disguising names and stuff like that, there's I'm not sure if there's something like that taking effect necessarily, because um, there's just more to the story. Because when you actually, that word, it says Gog and Magog, and it says prince of Meshach and Tubal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at this word Meshach, and it's kind of related to Mashiach. It's also kind of related to Mishkan. There's a lot of different words. So I haven't fully flushed that out, but even the word Tubal is spelled exactly the same as the word table, which is the Hebrew word for world. So the word world, and so table, it's kind of, so when you go back to, when you look up Tubal Meshach, you go back to Genesis. It talks, from the lineage of Gomer, which comes from Japheth. So, but that list in Genesis is the list of the table of nations. And so I think there's
Interesting.
a lot more there than just, Tubal being a person. And so, but if you follow, if you continue reading on, it talks about Ashkenaz,
Mm-hmm.
which is, you've heard of Ashkenazi Jews and stuff. And I believe, the coming from Japheth, but also, if you read further into a prophecy about Japheth, you have, it says that Japheth shall dwell in Shem's tents. So there's a lot more going on there. It's a little bit interesting, but what I was seeing is kind of, and there's also a connection with Reuben as well. So there's a lot more to study and flesh out there. But that's kind of
It's
what I. Go ahead.
it's interesting that you've been studying that because I've been listening to this guy Tut Altz. Do you know who he is? He's a Jewish rabbi. I've been listening to Jewish rabbis more this week. I've kind of gotten to the point. I used to listen to a lot of like Christian YouTubers and like these people who are like doing research and giving prophecies and stuff like that. I'm at the point now where so many of these people who are talking to Jesus, having dreams and visions, and giving these prophetic words are all just full of BS because like so many of them have made very specific claims that have not come true. There are so many of them that were making claims about stuff that was going to happen with the inauguration and even shortly following after that that are just, nope, you guys are wrong. There was one guy I was holding out on who back in December of 2020 during before the electoral college had declared the winner. He kept saying that the military was going to come in. He was seeing these visions of the military coming in and like reinstating Trump. I had high hopes that like he was right. It's just like, that sounds good. That'd be cool. Let's see some justice come in, right? And he continued doing that for like months afterwards, and he really burned me out on the whole like these prophets, the dreams and the visions and stuff like that. I have high hopes that people are hearing from God, right? But I'm at the point to where all of them are just a bunch of charlatans. They practice cold reading techniques. So they say things in a generic way, and they say them so often that they're bound to hit something that sounds like they're actually getting things correct. So I got to the point this week. I'm like, I'm just done. I'm done. If anybody says that they had a dream, a vision, or they're talking to Jesus, I'm just like, you know what? You're on my do not watch list for now, just because it's such a waste of my time because nothing is proving out. It's only the people who are actually taking the time to actually research and observe and pay attention to what's going on. Those are the people where I'm dedicating my time. And oddly enough, I've been listening to a lot of Jewish rabbis. There's a lot of Jewish rabbis that are getting very worked up about the Messiah coming. Have you noticed this? There's a lot of new rabbis that are like, the Messiah is coming. They're all excited, and it's like they're going through the scripture and they're associating what is in the scripture with our day and age. That's the stuff that's super exciting to me. But this guy Tut Altz, he just did a video recently on Gog and Magog, and he's of the opinion, he's like, I'm wondering if the conflict that Israel is engaged in right now, or was until the ceasefire, isn't part of that Gog and Magog that's referred to in Ezekiel. Did you find anything like that in your study, that there could be some
Sorry,
correlation with what's going on now?
you said if who was what now? Yeah.
So he was saying that he's leaning towards the possibility that the conflict in Israel with Gaza and Hamas could be part of that Gog Magog.
Oh, okay. Well, that's one thing I was going to say. Like Gog and Magog, I don't see that as Russia. Those are the Scythians, and um, it's actually out of Turkey is where it's
Hmm.
pointing me to. But that whole region, it's kind of that's the challenge too we have in this day and age, because names have changed, territories, and what was once, this land is no longer a part of this land, and so
Yeah.
um, the borders and territories are a little bit different. But that's kind of there was just a connection with Turkey and with the coast, and that's what we were talking about. AI last time we discussed AI. Aleph Yod in the Hebrew is where we get the word for isles and
Right.
islands or coasts, and it talks about prophecies and the king of the king of Tyre or whatever. It's had this relationship also with Meshach and Tubal, and so there's a lot more there to dig into. But yeah, to your point, I've kind of given up. If you look at Deuteronomy, I believe it's Deuteronomy 13, it talks about the test for a false prophet. You
Hmm.
know, Even if they say something that does come true, if they are still leading you to a different Elohim other than the Elohim of our Messiah, you know,
Hmm.
placing him, then he said, don't listen to him. If a prophet is saying do away with the law, the Torah, his instructions, then don't listen to him. And so I kind of take that to heart when it comes to people saying prophetic things and stuff. I'm like, this person rejects Torah, and it's not like people do what they do based upon what they know. So if there's somebody that just maybe doesn't have knowledge at that time, yes, Yah, I believe, can give them revelation and show them stuff. But typically it's like, what is the point of the revelation? That is it to strike fear? And it's like, what is this information? I kind of look for, like, well, give me direct instructions. If
Hmm.
it's from Yahuwah and he's wanting to do something for his people, it's not just to scare them or to be, it's like it should be some type of instruction.
Hmm.
you know it should be knowledge and wisdom. Chakma. So we should be listening to these prophets. Like, read Jeremiah 23. That just, like, to me, I'm like, oh, that's all the Christian prophets out there that are speaking, saying the Lord told me this and the Lord told me that. And I mean, that'd be a good
Oh.
good good one to look up. But yeah, you gotta take it for a grain of salt. And I have found this one rabbi, um, and I don't, I'm not like Jewish or listen to rabbis all the time or anything, but there's this guy. I'll have to send you a link. I think his name is Ephraim something, but
Hmm.
he does. He's like saying, yeah, it's 2025. The Mashiach's supposed to show up,
Yeah. There's
but
a lot of them doing that.
they reject Messiah. So
Yeah.
I take them with a grain of salt as well. With that same type of reservation when I listen, because some of the stuff that I've listened to, I'm like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
They bring in some other, especially like modern day Judaism is just infiltrated with um, Hellenism, and even from the past, and that's what Christianity. A lot of that is rooted in Hellenism, Gnosticism, these type of ideas and thoughts that don't necessarily come from Scripture, but come from these Hellenistic ideas. And but I still listen to, because they have a good understanding and knowledge of Hebrew culture,
Hmm.
and there's some things that from a person from our perspective that didn't grow up hearing the Torah or hearing the word in these instances throughout our lives, it can give us good insight in certain things. But like I said, you always have to grain of salt.
Well,
Um,
I'm finding that I'm actually enjoying them more because I get more value from their teaching and their perspective, because a lot of these guys, their native language is Hebrew. So they're going to have a better grasp of the Torah than I do reading it in English, and it's really interesting hearing them explain different passages and different things. And it's so funny because listening to them, to the ones who know that to expect Messiah, which their belief is that every generation has a Messiah, that there's always a Messiah in every generation, and it's just waiting for Yah to basically set them loose. But it's interesting now listening to these guys say this is it, the timing is right, and they describe all the scripture about the attributes of what to look for, and it's just like you're describing Yeshua. It's like he's got to build a temple, he's got to bring, he's doing all these different things. It's just like that's Yeshua.
Yeah, they're explaining. What was it? I made a comment on somebody. Oh, he was talking about the Jewish rabbi I was listening to is on a short, and they were saying he is going to be like a snake on a pole. So they say Mashiach is kind of related to a snake. And so if you know
Mm.
the story of Moses lifting up the snake on the pole, and
Mm-hmm.
so the word uh, for snake in Hebrew is nashak, not nashik, nashik. Somebody correct me if I'm butchering that. I can feel it, but um, so the Hebrew word. But anyways, when it talks about lifting up an ensign, I believe is in Isaiah chapter 11 or 9, and talks about we'll lift up an ensign, and that's the Hebrew word nes, which is noon samic, and so the noon in paleographically looks like a seed or a snake, and then the samic paleographic looks like a stake with thorns on it.
Mm.
So it's kind of sticking out. So the ensign is kind of like a snake on a pole. And so I commented that to this rabbi about, that's what Messiah says, I am that snake on the pole in some respects. And it's kind of like we have in our medical field, we have the snake that twists around the pole. I
Right.
can't remember the name of what that's called. And so that's what it was when Israel was coming out of uh, Egypt. They looked to the snake on the pole, and it healed them. And then
Mm-hmm.
as time progressed, they ended up worshiping the snake on the pole rather than the one
Yeah.
that provided the snake on the pole. And that's
Yep.
like, man, what we do in Christianity. We worship the snake on the pole rather than, Yahuwah that put the snake on the pole. And
Yeah.
so just a lot of connection there. But that ensign is shall be lifted up. That's prophetic that this has already happened. And when you read the prophecy about, but that seems like it's the whole prophecy is like it's an end of days prophecy, and it's like, well, was that already accomplished through the Messiah? Is it like a spiritual accomplishment that we kind of think, oh, it's the end of days? It's the end of those days. It's the end of that age, end of that period. And so even Paul, all the apostles and stuff said like these are the end times. Like they were living in it now. It's like they've already entered that age at that point in time. So when the Mashiach risen, we've entered into that new age of Pisces, what people believe. So going from Aries, the Lamb, the age of the Lamb, to Pisces, and now we're kind of entering in this new age of um, the outpouring, right,
Mm-hmm.
of Sagittarius, right? So he's pouring out the Holy Spirit. Like we're getting all this information, we're getting all this revelation that of things that we have, our fathers had been handed lies to that we all believed in part of it. It's like the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit's doing this outpouring to the body of believers and giving us information. And like I say all the time, it's like behind every lie is truth. And so
Mm-hmm.
with all these lies, we're learning a lot of truth. And so what a great day to be alive.
Yeah, that's for sure. One thing I always enjoyed about that poll is it reminds me of Yeshua, in that it's so easy to be saved that to be healed, all you have to do is look at that poll. And that's how easy, that's God's heart for us, right? He sent his only begotten son, that all you have to do is just look at him. And this is one of the reasons why I've toned down. Like I used to really get after, who is Yeshua and his divinity and stuff like that, and the Antichrist. And I used to be, I just wouldn't talk to people who disagreed with me. And I realized how egotistical and prideful that was on my part, because it's just like, surely I'm wrong in some areas, and they're wrong in some areas. And it really comes down to, I was just listening to a rabbi talk about this today. No, not a rabbi. This is Dan McClellan, I think is his name, who is it was the Good Samaritan, and he was talking about who is your neighbor, and he said Jesus flipped that around to where it's not so much a matter of who is your neighbor, it's, are you a good enough neighbor? Are you the person, is your behavior just and right, to the point to where other people, aren't sick of you, right? That they want to be around you. So I liken that to, it's so, like, the loving God and loving your neighbor is so simple that even that we've all, we all have stuff wrong. Nobody is 100% right, right? I mean, like, that's a consequence of being so far removed from the things that actually happened. All we have are records and rocks and pieces of paper that have been worn through the ages, to where nobody can say for certain, the way things were. So we're all basically just guessing, and some of us might be a little bit more right than the others. And really, we should be focusing on how to love one another, rather than like who to find our, our clique. I'm reminded of that because when you look at the poll, it's like it's all you have to do is look at it. If everybody is looking at it and like in the same direction, doesn't really matter who's right and wrong. But that's where the healing is. It's just like the healing is so simple, but we all want to make it so complicated. We all want to be like, we want to filter out those who are against us and only allow those who are with us. And that's how you end up with like conflicts. That's how you end up with the situation with like Cain and Abel, to where Cain didn't present the best, and for whatever reason rose up and killed his brother. It's like, we want to avoid that. You don't want to be in that situation like Cain was, to where you feel like you need to, rise up against your brother. No, we need to work together. We need to love one another. And by, putting God first and loving, our neighbor as ourselves, that's really the scalable solution for peace. And that's every time I hear about that snake on the pole, that's what I'm reminded of. It's just like, we're all a bunch of idiots. We just, things are going to be fixed when Yeshua comes back, right? It's like, we're going to know what the truth is, and I'm sure we're all going to find out that we were all a little wrong. Some of us more wrong than the others.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that is like the crux of the question, like who is my neighbor? And it's everyone.
mm-hmm,
Everyone is your neighbor. Everyone, because everyone was created, mankind was created in the image of Elohim. And so
mm-hmm,
we, regardless of their belief system, regardless of what they've grown up to learn and understand, or they're still Yah's creation. And they may be confused. They may not have all the knowledge that I have, but
mm-hmm,
they're still a human being, and they're part of Yah's creation. And they're just deceived like we're just deceived. And it's kind of like that's how we honor and give glory to the Father, is like Messiah said, that's how they're going to know you, is how you love each other, how you
mm-hmm.
treat your neighbor, which can be anybody. And that's always so hard too, because it's like somebody who is, like just our current day situation with our administrations, like you want to curse some of these people out, you want to say, you're going to hell, you're getting condemned, and this and that. And it's like, but Mashiach died for them as well.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to, that's that, trying to find that balance. But because even the Messiah, though, he rebuked people, he rebuked
Mm-hmm,
Pharisees, but he died for them too. If he died for the whole world, then he died for them as well. And so it's
yeah.
kind of like, how do we have that balance of, you know shaking our fist at the sinner because of their sin, versus just being able to love them unconditionally. And it's because you can't just bend over for them, you can't be a doormat for Jesus, you have to stand up on principles and what's right. And it's just that fine walk of loving people regardless of where they are in life. And then just but it's 7 times 7, right? It's like the curse in Daniel. It's like, how many times do you forgive somebody? And it's like 7 times 7, 490 years. It's like that curse has been lifted through Messiah. Now that we can really see what it's like to be um, Yahuwah, to be in the flesh as a man, like to walk in that spirit of righteousness and holiness towards our brothers and sisters. So
Yeah.
powerful stuff.
Yes, indeed.
So what's happening in the news today? What are we were going to discuss something about
Well, did they confirm RFK? I caught the last part of their. I don't even know if I want to call it questioning because all they were doing was grandstanding to make their own points. They barely gave him an opportunity to even answer the questions. Did they confirm him?
sent you that link about somebody had said that Trump had done away with. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with I want to say it's the HR 5367. So it's what's called like the propaganda bill.
Oh, the Obama propaganda bill. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was kind of, I was reading an article because I was trying to find, and maybe it's just Google wasn't allowing me to find it, but basically it's the Smith-Mundt Act. Um, and so what that is Obama signed legislation that changed the U.S. Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948. So that's the Smith-Mundt Act, and it's the
Hmm.
amendment made it possible for some materials created by the U.S. Agency for Global Media, whatever what I say is that's the CIA, the
Hmm.
nation's foreign broadcasting agency, to be disseminated in the U.S. So, in people aren't aware, in 2013, Obama repealed this thing and allowed for essentially propaganda to be disseminated through our news, through our media and stuff. And so I was watching, just some kids, you think about like all the trans stuff that happened as of late, and like these people have been getting conditioned since 2013 for a lot of this stuff. And like we're just talking about being mad at somebody, it's like you see this sinful act and this stuff, and it's like a lot of these people are just victims
Mm-hmm.
of propaganda and stuff. And so back in the day, back in 48 or whatever, they made this law saying, hey, the US can't put forth propaganda. And now supposedly Obama um, made it available to where we can get propagandized.
Well, yeah, we saw that in full force during the Biden administration. I mean, the only people who didn't see that are the ones who listen to the lamestream media. Did you ever see those montages where people would put all the different legacy medias in little screens all saying the same thing, and they're like literally just repeating the same script all in unison? I mean, that is the epitome of propaganda right there, when all of your news organizations are in lockstep, saying the same thing, literally as if they're reading from a script. Thank God for the internet and for Rumble and YouTube and for independent reporters and journalists like Project Veritas, which is now the OMG network. Alex Jones, even. You ever see all the memes about like all the conspiracy theories about Alex Jones was right, and they're all just checked off?
He's got quite a few of them. Well, I saw Carrie Lake was doing an interview because she was a newscaster. I'm sure you're familiar with her, but she was
Hmm.
talking about that because it was actually one corporation or guy owns all these different TV channels or whatever, and so they got
Right.
the script, and so it was actually kind of just one source that gave all these different media outlets the same script essentially, but they
Yeah.
were all part of the same organization. It wasn't like they were CNN was coordinating with MSNBC or anything like that. It was just, but
I
it's
imagine
still,
part of,
it shows you that's how it goes. That's, they get the message, and then here's
yeah.
your script, read it.
I imagine part of it's laziness too, because there's organization like Reuters to where people put out press releases and then everybody picks up that release and reads it. So it's like they're literally all reading the same articles. But the one of the big fallacies of that is, and why I say laziness is, there was a lack of fact checking. And there's, I mean, even today, there's people who will sit there and argue about you support a convict, you know, a convicted felon. And it's just like, my favorite question is like, what was he convicted of? Why are you saying that he's a felon? And they just stumble over themselves because they're just repeating what they heard on legacy media. You know, they have CNN running in the background and they're still, or they listen to The View, and that's what they chirp all day long is felon, felon, felon. You know what I mean? It's just like, no, he's not.
He was a convicted felon. The other guy was just unconvicted felon. So what's the difference?
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Yeah. Wow. Well,
so
we've been going for about an hour. Do you want to see if there's any questions? You guys have any questions? Anybody in the chat?
oh, the other one too. Before we get into that, was we were talking about the White House. So that during that
Mm,
press briefing, they're now opening up the press briefings to independent journalists and content
praise
creators.
God.
So
Yep.
that's, I mean, that's really awesome. Just that kind of made me bubble up a little bit inside because I was like, man, that's kind of cool. Just because government's like so locked down and it's so scripted, and so it'd be good just to get like normal people in there. And I think that's been the change within our environment is podcast, long form content like this, being able to have discussions and stuff. And like, I think people enjoy that more. And I think it's going to be a good thing to have different perspectives than just the typical, thing that we've been seeing since our grandparents have been around, and with the press briefing and stuff, and get some real questions in there.
So we could see Alex Jones in the front row at the press briefing. The frogs are turning gay. Tell us why the frogs are turning gay.
So it could be good or it could be a complete disaster. We'll see.
Yeah, it could be fun.
Like I said, the show for
Yeah.
sure. But anyway,
Well, yeah.
yeah, let's.
Not only is
Yeah,
he the most active president, he's also pretty funny too.
yeah.
All right,
Well,
what? Here's
don't understand, like, from the left, they don't ever listen to him. They listen to sound bites of him, and
yeah.
it's all trying to get defensive. But you tell he's a razzer. He's like breaking people's
Mm-hmm.
a hard time and just joking. He does the weave and stuff, and people don't listen to him long enough to really understand, like, oh, that's his personality. He's got that New York mentality of how he treats people. And because sometimes I'm like, I maybe have a little decorum in certain respect, but that's just his personality. That's the way he is. So
Yeah. All right. So we got a question on here. What are your thoughts on the partial preterism little season theory? Are you referring to seal number 5, where those under the altar are told to hang on for a little season? What is that? Partial preterism.
so
Partial preterism.
preterism is everything's already been done, right? And then partial preterism, I guess, is just some.
Partial preterism is the eschatological end times view that most of the prophetic events in the Bible, including much of Revelation, were fulfilled in the first century, especially with the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. However, unlike full preterism, partial preterists still believe in a future bodily return of Christ, the resurrection of the dead, and the final judgment. I have thoughts. You want to go first?
No, I guess there's a lot to unpack there. I ascribe to some of that. I believe, because like I spoke about this before, as far as my view on the Book of Revelation, how I see it as a revealing behind the curtain of the spiritual
Mm-hmm.
realm, and so that I see, and I think of this as the whole Bible. It's like I ask that question, like, is this true? And when I say true, meaning, like, I don't, not that I don't believe the Bible is the word of God. I totally do. I totally believe it's, no man came up with this, but I believe that it's written in a certain way to have us, stay continually seeking and continually searching and continually looking for answers and stuff. And so, yeah, I think I'm in that camp in regards to, I still believe in there's going to be a resurrection, and the end of but I don't know that there's like this end of the world type of thing. I think it's a refreshing. That's what I see throughout scriptures. It's always a renewal. Just like you talked about,
Hmm.
there's different messiahs that come. And so I do believe that Revelation is kind of a poetic way to express a reality of that, eliminating the earthly temple and showing us the heavenly spiritual temple. And so
Yeah.
that new Jerusalem that comes down from heaven, I don't believe that that's literal. I don't believe there's some cube or block or city or whatever is going to fall out of the sky. And it's, I believe it's a way of communicating to us that we are the temple, we are the body, we are the bride, we have been given this new this new creation in Messiah, and that it says that we are lively stones, that the Israel makes up the gates and or the foundation, and the apostles are the gates. This is spiritual talk. This is metaphoric. It's not literal. And so I don't see that as some talks about um, frogs coming out of the mouths, and
Right.
horses with shields and locusts with shields and stuff. Like, that's not literal. This is not to be taken literal. And so it's a way to communicate a story to us, a way to communicate a concept, an idea. And so I think a lot of that was fulfilled. I messaged you the other day when I was saying about the first beast is kind of like the Roman Catholic Church in a sense,
Hmm.
and it gets its power from the dragon, and then it's
Right.
become wounded in a sense. And the second beast, the Protestant Church, the daughter of the whore in a sense, is comes and brings that same doctrine. And so the prophet, the false prophet, is the Pope, and so they spread this doctrine of the God man that removes the laws, which is the spirit of Antichrist. And so this is, if you look through history, there's been the rise and fall of the Roman Catholic Church and stuff. And so, like, even
Hmm.
the false image of a Messiah is kind of like he's wounded and then he's brought back to life. And so we've been presented through the faith of a false image of the true Messiah. And so I see that has been accomplished and fulfilled in that sense that, hey, this book of Revelation, it could be cyclical. There could be more things happening, but from a spiritual perspective, it's accomplished. He is already seated at the right hand of the throne of Elohim. It
Hmm.
says that we are seated up there. So that's that prolepsis talk, that something that has happened, but it hasn't physically happened yet in this physical dimension that we're in. But if you go all the way back to the book of like Genesis, read, I think it's chapter, I want to say 35 or 36, it gives you a list of names of people um, who didn't exist at the time that they're being recorded about in Genesis. So how did that happen? It talks about the tribe of Dan in Abraham's day. Dan didn't even exist. And so the word for story is the word in Hebrew is midrash, which is also the word myth means story. And so I'm not saying the Bible is a myth. I believe that the people really did exist, but I believe there's also embellishment within the scriptures to portray a story to keep us looking for Yahuwah, and it teaches us about life. And so the story that we've been given is is a thing for us. It's a message for life. It's a love letter for all generations, that we can continue the rest of our lives seeking out and understanding and growing closer and closer to the Father, and till that ultimate day of that resurrection, till that happens. So, but yeah, I think Revelation is kind of closed up, but I'm open to stuff still needing to be fulfilled. So that's where I am.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that because there's definitely types and shadows in the scripture. You see that with the seven churches. Like clearly, those churches existed because it's referring to literal physical locations. So Revelation 2 and 3, when he's talking about Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Laodicea, those churches, they were literal. I believe that they were literal physical locations in Turkey. And in fact, you can actually visit all of them today. So it's like we know where they are. They were literal locations, and I believe that the first century church. when after Christ was crucified and resurrected and ascended, they moved through those areas teaching people about Yeshua in order to start the movement, in order to start the building of that temple. And I believe that actually happened and that it was fulfilled at that period of time. But I also believe that there's a reason why Yeshua hasn't come back yet. Why? Because I do believe that he is sitting at the right hand of God, that he is a man, and that he will come back and we will see him someday. So I believe that the period of time between him leaving and his return is the continual building of that temple. So yeah, I do believe that there are fulfillments, but I believe that there's a continuation until he returns.
Perfect for saints, yeah.
Yeah, so because I do believe that the curse will come to an end, that things will get better, things will change, that evil and Satan are only for a period of time, and those things will come to an end. As far as like the Book of Revelation, for most of my life I followed the same narrative that you hear most people screaming from the top of their lungs on YouTube and in the chat. Which is about this Antichrist, who's because even the same church you and I went to, they teach that every generation raises an Antichrist, that at the end times he will fight against Christ, fight against the Messiah, and so there's this whole narrative. There's books and there's movies and there's a whole industry built around this narrative. And I still have some videos. I think I may have taken the majority of them down, but when I first got on YouTube with my channel, I Am Watchful, I made videos about the Antichrist. Like, this is what he's going to be like. He's going to be charming and he's going to fool people because there's going to be a strong delusion. And I was making those kind of videos just regurgitating and parroting the stuff that everybody else was saying. And I got to a point where I realized, because I was like going through the scripture and doing teachings, and I'm like, I realized that I was reading into the scripture based on that story. Like I had a certain belief about something that I was interjecting into the scripture. And when I really started reading it, I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't say it. Like in Daniel 9, everybody uses that to talk about the Antichrist. And I'm like, the Antichrist is actually in here. And like same thing in Revelation. Everyone's like, the first beast from the sea, that's the Antichrist. And I started realizing, like, wait a minute, I've had this cognitive bias about this for so many years. So I started like, I've got to go back to like the very beginning and start like, number one, reading what's actually written and not assuming that just because something's similar that they're the same or identical. And that's where it really started opening up for me, to where I started realizing the Antichrist isn't actually a person, it's a spirit. When you do that study, and this is the thing I say probably the most often on this channel, is it's the simplest study in the world to do, because it's only used 5 times in 4 places in the Bible, and they're all in the same 2 books, 1st and 2nd John. When you study it, you'll see that it's a spirit with specific attributes, and the end result is it causes people to deny God. Or it's just like that is what it does. It denies the purpose of the Messiah. It denies the purpose of the Anointed One. It gets people to basically believe that a man is God. And that is against the Old Testament. That is against the law. So I can see the correlations and why people have built this story, but by failing to actually look at the details, they're missing so much that's available to know. Like, for instance, in 2 Thessalonians 2, where it talks about the man of sin, the son of perdition, who sits in the temple of God as God, showing himself that he is God, because the story makes so many assumptions, and because it collapses so many sections of the scriptures together for simplicity. It's like the kindergarten version of the end time events. They say that this is going to be a real person. Like, there's going to be a man who actually goes into this temple and declares himself that he is God. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So there's more than one possibility with that. But that's not what I grew up believing. I believed that there was going to be a guy who was literally going to go in a temple and say, I am God, worship me, like Caesar, because that's what Caesar did. Caesar said once a year you have to declare that he is God. So maybe there's something along those lines that will happen, but I think the deeper meaning of that with us being the temple of God, which First Corinthians 3:16 says, "Know ye not that you are the temple of God." That could mean other things. It could be ego and pride. So that could be an element of you elevating yourself above truth, right? Because of your ego and your pride. It could also, imply other things. It could also be regarding your belief, your doctrines, right? Maybe you believe something. You're elevating a man to the position of God, right? I mean, so it's just like, so I kind of like definitely believe that things have been fulfilled, but I don't believe that we're at the end and there are things that are still left to be discovered and be fulfilled. And the most exciting thing for me was that Revelation 12 sign, because that was like, this is a physical thing that happened that was written about a long time ago that only happens one time. And then that's kind of my anchor point to where I'm like, I've changed from trying to assume that I know what things mean to where it's just like I'm watching for things happening and seeing like, where does this fit in the scripture? Because we're in this end time. It seems like we're in this end times. What fits with what's happening? Like, so what part of the scripture is actually, it's like, where are we at in the book of Revelation today? So, well, to your point, yes, there's a ton of it that's figurative. Like, I'm not expecting, frogs coming out of people's mouths. But it wouldn't surprise me if that doesn't mean people speaking lies, which we've seen no end of lying in these last, 4 years. Like, with the propaganda that we were talking about and the, the woke mind virus, where people are convinced of error, clearly convinced of error, and things that are lies. It's just like, I'm trying to understand now. I'm at this place where I'm like, what could these are clearly figurative. What could they actually translate to in real life? That answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I was looking at Revelation, talking about the 666 number, and if you look at that in the Greek, it's chi
Cheese
epsilon
stigma.
sig stigma. And so I was looking at that word stigma. If you go into it's connected to the actual Hebrew word nakuda, which is where we get the word nakud. So, which is like a nikud. So,
Mm-hmm.
the little dots that they added to the word. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but it's like Nicolaitans, right? You nick yourself shaving, nakud. So it's extra
Hmm.
added dots and marks. And so there's a lot of correlation there. But I was just trying
Interesting.
because we go, oh, 666, and if you look at the gematria and people, it's the number of man and stuff. And so I was like, well, how do these, like, what does chi line up with, or z, or it's chi z six stigma? What does that line up with Hebraically? We're looking at this in the Greek, but let's assume John's a Hebrew and he would have put in the Hebrew correlation. And so,
Yeah.
should I be looking at what is the Hebrew variation of this Greek letter, or should I be looking at the number from that? So there's a lot more to dig into there. I was kind of rabbit holing into that. I was like,
Hmm.
I think there's more to look at here. You've got the 666 of Solomon's gold in the temple, and then the six-sided triangle and the star, star Rephaim that a lot of people believe that Israel puts on their flag and stuff. And so um, there's a lot there, but to your point, that's kind of, this has been a discussion I've had in other groups too. When the Messiah, when before he resurrected, or before he ascended, he told the disciples, it's not for you to know the end times. It's not for you to know what the Father has in store. And so it's kind of like, well, gosh, why we have to sit here and look all the time if we'll never find it. He says no one knows the day or the hour. But he also says that, if somebody says I'm over here, or if I saw the Messiah over here, don't believe him. He says the kingdom of heaven is within you. And so it's an internal thing that it's not something physical that we are going to see. that's going to be manifest in this physical realm. And so this is like a spiritual thing that's happening. And, we were talking about rabbis earlier. I've discussed this before in several of my videos. The Pardes, paradise. That's an acronym in Hebrew interpretation that they
Mm.
have: Parashat, Remez, Darash, and Sod. And so Sod, those are like 4 different levels of interpreting Scripture and how to
Mm-hmm.
understand Scripture. So you read the first level, the P, the Parashat, that's the first surface level. So you read it, and that's what it's interpreted as: literal interpretation. Like Jonah got swallowed by the whale or something. And so you go through each level and you find that there's deeper meaning, and it's really trying to teach us a story, and that's what brings you into paradise. That's what that you ascend. And so it talks about that in you like I don't want to say mental ascension, but it is kind of that you go to the next story. And when it talks about like entering into the temple, they had the staircase, and so each one of the stairs, that's the Hebrew word Allah, is to ascend each step. And so you read in Psalms 120 through 35, 34, it's 15 degrees, and so there's a full circle is 15 degrees times 24 equals 360 degrees. And so that's, you've come full circle in the Mazra. So you climb the stairs mentally in your mind, and you receive revelation. The higher you go, you ascend to heaven. In a sense, you make it to paradise. And so it's kind of an upside down in a sense, because like the sod is the hidden understanding, which is the word counselor. Also, it's counsel. So it talks about when that Yahuwah sits among his counsel, that ye shall be gods. And
Mm.
I ask this question is, you know, I think a lot of times too, we have this God's idea of like Superman, like Jesus is Superman healing people, doing all this stuff. But from a
Yeah.
Hebraic perspective, God's Elohim's also means judges, means
Mm-hmm.
righteous judges. So he sits amongst the righteous judges. When we ascend, when we dig for the the scriptures, like we're digging for treasures, for those pearls that are in the scriptures, and we find the treasures. And keep your treasures in heaven. You're in the thesaurus. The thesaurus is the words, and so the words of Elohim is what illuminates us, what brings us into this paradise, into this heaven, brings us into the New Jerusalem, into revelation of who Yahuwah is and who his creation is, and who Yah is through his son. We see that he is the word of Yahuwah manifest in the flesh, and that is Yah's perspective for us. That's his idea for us. Like, you go looking for the Messiah, you find yourself, you find out who we are as a body of people. And it's not so much about a temple cut with stone, it's about the altar of the heart,
Mm.
uncut stone, right? That's where the sacrifice is made on the heart. And so, when we don't put, and that's kind of, it takes you all the way back to Genesis, where it says, the serpent says, nah, you shall be gods if you learn this. So it's kind of like, well, if we turn the Messiah into God and we're trying to be like the Messiah, it's like, are we saying that we are being gods? I see that, like I talked about earlier, Gnosticism and Hellenism, this new age concept where you can
Mm-hmm.
mentally ascend and reach this type of, so it's kind of like a very close two-edged sword of, hey, you're ascending, you're reaching this concept, but what do you do with this authority, with this power? Do you lay down your life and sacrifice and serve others, or do you say, I've reached this status of godhood, of
Right.
me? I am that man of perdition that sits in this temple, that thinks of themselves as
Mm-hmm.
God, and more than just like, not just one person, but everybody, anybody could be that person
Yeah.
in a perdition. So
Well, yeah, it goes both ways. It's just like it can be an internal thing. Are you elevating yourself above God, or are you elevating somebody else above God? Both of them are wrong.
right. It's a slippery slope. It's just that fine line, like looking to the serpent versus worshiping and giving glory to the serpent. It's like we
Yeah.
always have to refocus, and like it's all Elohim. It's all, and that's why I love like the Paleo Hebrew. You get into just the Aleph is like the head, the leader, the strong, the ox, but it's silent. Without it, nothing else, nothing exists. But once that Aleph enters into the Bet, Aleph Bet, it it now becomes concrete. So now it gives it form. It's like an Aleph Bet. Ab is the name for father. So the Aleph enters the Bet. That's the father, and then Gimel, the next word is he starts to walk. So the father enters the house. He walks to the Dalet. Dalet is the door. So you enter the door throughout the house, and Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and you continue on, and then you go into gardening, into the Zion. Like the whole story is in the Hebrew alphabet of creation
Hmm.
and of life and the Bible itself. So it's a beautiful thing, and it's like we asked that question is like if this existence, like we're in this three-dimensional realm where we can't see things clearly. We look through a glass darkly. We can't see this thing in this dimension realm. It's like once we obtain that next spiritual realm, that new spiritual body, like the Messiah did, we can see past the veil. It talks about the veil of his flesh. We're veiled in this flesh and this that's corruptible, but there is no time in eternity. From what I understand of that concept, it's like maybe we're already there, but we're in this dimension right now of going through this process, getting trial by fire, perfecting ourselves. And so it's like,
Yeah.
has this stuff already happened? Yeah. Hasn't everything already happened in eternity? There's when does eternity begin and when does it end?
Yeah. So, what do you think about Armageddon? Do you think there's going to be a day of Armageddon? Like, there's going to be like a final battle?
Nah, no, I don't. I mean, that's more deserves more study. If you look at, I think it's in the Hebrew Megiddo. So let's
Hmm.
talk about the Valley of Megiddo.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a lot that's already been fulfilled and taken place there. And that's what I told you like before. I think kind of that 1,000-year deception. It's like, maybe we just have this time period that a lot of these things have already been. I just believe a lot has already been accomplished in Messiah. That we kind of look to these Old Testament prophecies, and it's like it was a poetic way to express certain things. Like I said earlier, in holding up the end sign, like that's happened. But if you continue reading, it's like, oh, is that happened at the end of the day, or no, that's already been accomplished. Like, did he already bring Israel and Judah back together? Has that prophecy happened? Did they come back to the land, or was he really trying to say something different? That it's not like literally I'm bringing these people back to land. It's like we are brought back to the land through the Spirit, and it's we are all one. There is no Jew or Gentile, Greek, barbarian. It's one in spirit in the Messiah. And so I think there's just a spiritual aspect to a lot of things that have already been fulfilled that we kind of look for a physical manifestation to take place.
What about things like the Euphrates River that, like, it's been a free flowing river for as long as we know, and it's drying up, but there's references to it drying up in the end times?
Yeah, I know what reference you're talking about, but if you keep reading and more into that, you can kind of see what he's talking about. So I think I was working part of the Gog Magog study. I believe if you read in Ezekiel, it talks about fire, this and burning and this and that, but you see that it's not a literal burning. And so you can say when something dries up, there's also a spiritual drying up of something.
Hmm.
You know? And
Sure.
so if he's, placing a curse upon something that says your land shall be dry, he talks about the earth quaking, but then you continue reading on, like you say, oh, there's going to be a huge earthquake. But if you continue reading on, it's a quaking within the people. And so the earth is quaking in that sense. And so I think you have to really look at each case to be like, hey, is this a literal physical manifestation that we're going to see, or is this just more poetic license that he's drying up? That he does talk about that, taking the word away from people, and even like the prophets. It's he's drying up the land in that respect. So you have to really dig into that context of even talking about blotting out the sun from smoke. It talks about
Mm-hmm.
you shall not see the light of the sun, the moon will not give her light, the stars will fall. It's like, is that like a literal thing, or is it because, hey, there's a big war that took place and there's smoke, it's covering up, or there's some super fog, or it could be like I said again, spiritual. The word, it's interesting we're talking about this because the word in for cloud in Hebrew is anon, ayin noon.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's ayin noon noon. It's anon, and it's also the same word for divination. And so the
Hmm.
idea is covering, concealment, and it
Mm-hmm.
talks about that when Israel came out of Egypt, that they were led by fire by night, a cloud by day, and fire by night. And so, is this a pillar of cloud? Is that, was it a literal cloud, or does he talk about, some type of divination that that's how he led them out? We kind of have, I think, this mentality of what divination is from a spooky evil perspective, but it's more about a concealing of not knowing. And so there is, those who practice divination from an evil sense, but there's also the righteous kind of knowing and understanding um, the things that are hidden, but he gives it to his prophets and kings to search these things out.
Yeah, there was a Joe Rogan episode recently. I think it was where he was interviewing Gad Saad. It was really recent. It was like yesterday or the day before. But he makes this comment in there, which I agree with him a lot, and I think would be healthy for a lot of people to kind of like change the way they believe on things. He goes, "There are things that I believe." Or he says, "There's things that I know to be true. There are things that I believe, and then there are things I want to be true." And he separates them into like those categories. It's like the things that you know to be true are the things you've experienced. It's just like that when you put your hand on a stove, you're going to get burned, right? You know that for a fact. You know that for a fact. There are things that you believe, that you have a high level of confidence in, and then you have things that you want to believe that you may have a high level of confidence, but you're not going to lose friends over it. And he gives the example of like Sasquatch. He's just like Bigfoot. He's like, I want to believe that there's a Bigfoot. He goes, but as a hunter, I know that bears stand up on their 2 feet. He says, I've seen it all the time. And they're tall and they look like people, especially if the lighting conditions or if they're in a bush or something like that. And he's like, so that's probably more than likely what Bigfoot is people are seeing bears walking on their hind legs, because it happens a lot. It happens all the time. And it wouldn't surprise me if all sightings of Bigfoot aren't just bears walking on their 2 feet. He goes, but I still want to believe in Bigfoot.
Right. Well, you heard the announcement that they made about the drones. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, FAA knew about that. It's like
Yeah.
I've argued with people online like aliens are not real, dude, chill out. And like
Yeah.
people get all worked up. It's like our government, like why wouldn't our government just come out and say, oh, these are they're doing tests, but people start to spiral. They look at a picture funny and they just, oh, there's a Sasquatch there. It's like,
Yeah.
you know and that's something that's, I feel like, within the Christian faith we've been handed a lot of fairy tales and mythical ideas, and we read
Yeah.
the book of Revelation without having that foundation of the Torah,
Mm-hmm.
having the foundation of how prophets speak, and
All
how
right.
the book is written from a physical carnal perspective, and the spiritual elaborate, more um, colorful, illustrative language that's used to
Yeah.
communicate ideas and concepts. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, cool. We've been going for a while. Oh, this was fun. This was a good conversation. We didn't really catch up on a whole lot of the news, but got to talk about a lot of concepts and stuff in scriptures.
yeah.
It was nice. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, no, just I think yeah, good discussion today. Definitely we'll have to try to do this more. I got to figure out what's going on with my computer. It's a pain in the butt. I don't know what's up.
Yeah.
No, if it's
We
Windows
need to
11.
get you set up with one of these little Mac Minis. Have you seen these things? These things are freaking amazing. They're like 400 bucks, 450. You can get them for 400 bucks if you qualify. Like if you're a teacher, or I think even students can even get them. So, but they're like 500 bucks normally. But they're little powerhouses. You'll be surprised at the difference between even a computer that's a year old and using one of these things. Just like how fast it loads just web pages, same internet speed. It's just it processes the JavaScript so much faster and more efficient that it makes all the difference in the world. I almost wonder if that's not part of one of the issues with the Windows stuff is it's just, there's a little processors just aren't keeping up with the current day changes. All that AI in the background that's monitoring you,
Watching the Black Mirror. Well, that's
is watching you.
TV is a Black Mirror, right? It's just a bunch of cameras just watching you and getting your facial expressions so they can know what
Yeah,
to sell you.
yeah,
No, it's like I mean I got a supercharged computer to so I could make my videos with because I was using it like a laptop forever and it was like took me 4 hours to upload a video, but
yeah,
for some reason, as of late, I think Windows 11 has been an issue. People have had a lot of those problems with it, so I don't know if it's the computer necessarily or just Windows
yeah.
11. I can't. I've tried had an Apple phone once, but it's like feels like a left hand to me. I just doesn't quite fit. It didn't seem quite
Yeah.
as intuitive to me.
No, I get it. I fought against it for a long time, but because I used to program, so I've been a programmer for 30 years, more, maybe even longer. I used to program pretty much dominantly on Windows machines. And then, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, when I started getting into the enterprise, everybody uses Macs. So I kind of I got forced into it. And now I prefer it. It's just more stable. I mean, like I love Windows. There's things that you can only do on Windows, but just the Mac stuff is just rock solid.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you've had maybe you need just come online here and see if I got any bugs.
Yeah.
Hook a brother up.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get you sorted one way or the other.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. We'll do this again soon.
Yep.
All right,
No problem.
everybody.
Appreciate it.
God bless. Shalom, shalom.